Hello and welcome to the Championship Talk podcast. I'm your host Paul O'Toole, and joined again for a consecutive week is my co-host Thomas Falco.
Hello.
So, despite everyone on Twitter saying how amazing it's been to have football back, it's actually the second game that we're going to be talking about. But we're going to go through the news first, and I think we're going to start with your team, Forest. Bong was given a 3-game ban for violent conduct. Now, we've just looked back at this, and he does take a swipe on the 45th minute towards Callum O'Hare. Wasn't the most vicious of acts, but a 3-game ban is not the ideal start to probably one of your better defenders.
You call yourself
going to miss 3 games already. I just think that's
You call yourself an expert at the Championship. I'm pretty sure that the majority of Forest fans are glad that he's been suspended for 3 games because he was part of the bomb squad at the start of the season, and because we haven't strengthened in that position, he's actually been called back. So. That's not the end of the world. He's been suspended, but what he done, I watched it back because I don't. It is very dangerous because you don't want to be. Sort of don't know how you have to excuse my dodgy finger. Sort of raked at Callum O'Hare's eyes, and I've like at the time I thought that was like an elbow. This seems like a really stupid thing to do, and I think the 3-game ban is fully justified because you can't do that, because at the end of the day you're risking someone's eyesight with actions like that, and I know there are far worse things that can happen on a football pitch than someone just doing that, but it's very dangerous. As I keep saying, that could cost someone their sort of vision, and I think a 3-game ban is justified.
I actually think he's a good player. You can't petition the FA to increase the ban just because you think he'd do better without him in the team.
If you think he's a good player, why don't you get him at Arsenal?
It'd probably improve the team. Jonson Clarke-Harris, Peterborough United striker, has been charged by the FA over online posts. Clarke-Harris has been charged with misconduct by the Football Association for historical online posts which allegedly include reference to sexual orientation. The 27-year-old was 18 at the time the social media comments were made, on the 27th of October 2012 and on the 6th of March 2013. The forward has been charged with 6 breaches of FA Rule E3 as well as aggravated breach of FA Rule E.2. He has to the 25th of August to respond. Peterborough have declined to comment. It's alleged that the comments were insulting and or abusive and or improper and or brought the game into disrepute. That's a sentence. And the aggravated breach because the alleged reference to sexual orientation. And we were talking offline, and we were kind of just debating that it's so long ago that he made these posts. It's almost like trawling through someone's history to dredge up bad things they've said, bad comments they've made. However, there are 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds on social media being anonymous and making abuse towards other people, footballers, celebrities, or whatever. And at no point is this ever acceptable. So regardless of how old these posts are, I actually think that the FA has a real chance here to make an example. And it's harsh that it's an example to a player that made these comments 10 years ago. But what it should do is act as an example for any young person to think about what they're about to post, to think about who they're about to troll, and to really make an example of, yes, social media companies have an obligation, one they're not actually doing too well on, but an obligation to stop online abuse of any kind. This is the FA's chance to back up their stance as the footballers that are getting abused and anyone that's getting abused online, that's not acceptable at any age, no matter how old you are, whether you're 8 years old or 80 years old. To go online and post things that are offensive is wrong, and I think the FA are probably going to take quite a firm stance. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, we did talk about it. We did talk about it off air, and this is a good chance with everything that's going on around us as well. And I think that's important to say. You said, and I know you mean us, like you said, but that's happening to footballers and famous people. It shouldn't be, this online abuse shouldn't be happening to anyone, whether you're famous or not, sort of, or not. No. Sort of, it's or not famous. It is completely unacceptable. I think we'll just wait. I think more of the discussion we were having off air is to maybe talk about this again next week and see what, because obviously the player has got the right to respond to the charge and appeal if he thinks that it's unfair or unjust. We haven't had an official line from Peterborough United Football Club as far as I'm aware. This is a fast moving situation as we were coming on.
It's got to the 25th of August.
Yeah, so we can talk about it in more detail next week to see whether he accepts the charge or decides to appeal, and then see what the ultimate punishment is, because I think you are right in what you say. It is a good opportunity to see what the FA do when they're campaigning about kick it out and all of the other campaigns. So yeah, I think it's one where we wait until next week and then discuss what has come out of it what has sort of come out in the wash, and then see if that acts see if it acts as a deterrent. But obviously we've got a long way to go, because as you say, people are able to do this anonymously and get away with it with no sort of repercussion or punishment whatsoever. So it'll be interesting to see what comes
the one thing, the two things that have stunned me by this: one, I can't believe social media has been going 10 years. That makes me feel very old. But two, it highlights probably the lack of education of younger people around what social media is, and that it's not acceptable to whether it be their classmates, whether it be friends, family, whoever it is. It's not acceptable to go online and abuse people. And I think that does highlight a lack of, a broader, we're just talking football here, like a broader lack of understanding as to the sort of the power of social media and the effect it can have on you as you grow up. The things that you say online are, cemented in stone. They're there for everyone to see. It's very, very difficult to get them deleted. You can delete them yourselves, but they are there for everyone to see. And I think that probably highlights a broader issue around social media that is, this highlights that 10 years ago, which is just absolutely crazy to think 2012 that, social media was even a thing, that it can affect someone's career and affect Peterborough United potentially, because of a silly decision he made 10 years ago. I just think that's there needs to be some sort of education for younger people. And, you think 10 years ago we would have been a similar age. To be honest, we weren't even using social media, were we?
No, I think I only started mine because a mutual friend didn't have any friends and wanted me to do it. I remember having a MySpace as well. Whatever happened to MySpace? But yeah.
Absolutely crazy. But as you're right, we will follow we'll follow this subject, because I do think it's a very interesting one, and I do feel for him in many ways that it's been dragged up from 10 years ago. However, I do think that it highlights that he was 18, and there are 18-year-olds right now going online and abusing people, whether it be homophobic, racist. That there are 18-year-olds going online and thinking that's acceptable, and he was an 18-year-old that went online and thought that was acceptable, and that's the kind of stance you probably have to look at. So we're going to look at the transfers. The biggest one, the only one I want to talk about, is Sol Bamba moving to Middlesbrough. The former Cardiff defender is in a player coach role at Middlesbrough. And I think what better person to learn from than Neil Warnock?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they've worked together before, and that was at Cardiff the last time, wasn't it? And obviously he's recovered. He's got the all clear from the
non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
That's the one. Thank you, Paul. Yeah, so brilliant to see him back in the game, and whether he gets any minutes on the pitch or not, or any significant minutes on the pitch or not, I suppose doesn't really matter, because Neil Warnock, a couple of years ago, I remember saying on the podcast when we found out that he was undergoing treatment, Neil Warnock said that he would be a great or a very successful sort of head coach manager in years to come. So obviously Neil Warnock thinks that's a very valuable asset to have behind the scenes as well as on the pitch. And I know they're struggling to get players in. He was referring to one of their players who we maybe talk about in the roundup and saying, but if he sort of blows up, in his words, like gets very tired and finds it all too much, then that's the best Middlesbrough can do. So getting them experienced sort of level-headed characters in is a real asset, and I think he will be an asset whether it's on the pitch or off the pitch for Middlesbrough in the coming months.
Absolutely. Now, you've got a list of transfers, but you were conscious that you didn't want to sit and read a list, but we like hearing your list of transfers. And there's a couple in there that I want to talk about afterwards, so I'm going to let you run down your list.
Yeah, I'm going to apologise for pulling funny faces and rubbing my mouth because my lip has gone all funny, Paul. Sorry, you'll see when you edit the video later on. I'll just pulling some funny faces earlier on. Yes, I have got my list in front of me. Oliver Norburn has left Shrewsbury Town to join Peterborough United for an undisclosed fee. Leo Ostergaard, a player we talked about last season, he was on loan at Coventry last season, has left Brighton to join Stoke on loan for the season. Very good centre-back. Would be very good to see him. I think he's already made an impact, hasn't he? I think he played at the weekend. Geordie Osoi Tutu has left Arsenal to join Nottingham Forest on loan for the season. A good right-back who, injury-prone last season for Cardiff, but had a good spell. I think that was with Bochum in the second Bundesliga a couple of seasons ago, so be interesting to see how he gets on. Flynn Downs has left Ipswich to join Swansea for an undisclosed fee. We saw him on the Saturday evening game, didn't we, making his debut, and we talked about him in the podcast previously. You may have seen him as well in the flesh when we went to Portman Road. You've already mentioned Sol Bamba. Josh Andrews has left Birmingham City to join Rochdale on loan. Adam Armstrong's transfer from Blackburn to Southampton has been confirmed. What was the fee for that one, Paul? Because I don't have that down. I couldn't actually find it when I was looking. Is it about 15 million?
In and around 15 million. I think there's some add-ons as well, and I think that's a sell-on fee as well. I think and he scored at the weekend.
Yes, made an instant impact, didn't he? All of these are loans, so I'll just go through the names. Will Godwin has left Stoke to join Hartlepool on loan. Sam Cosgrove has left Birmingham to join Shrewsbury Town on loan. Tom Deli Bashiru has left Watford to join Reading on loan, midfielder. We've not talked about Reading's situation. I feel bad because obviously we'll round it up more in our transfer window roundup in a couple of weeks, but Reading are currently under a transfer embargo and I find it hard to bring players in. That's the first player they've been able to bring in this season, so that's very interesting to see how he gets on. Jake Clark-Salter has left Chelsea to join Coventry City on loan for the season. That's a player we saw last season in the Championship, I believe, as well. He's a name very familiar anyway. Mark McNulty has rejoined Dundee United from Reading on loan for the second consecutive season. And I've done my list and there were some went through today, so I've had to add. Thomas Meyer has left Hull to join SKU Amstetten on a free transfer. This one makes me laugh and I want to talk about him as well. Fawad Basharu has left Nottingham Forest to join Omonia Nicosia on a free transfer. He was the player last season who Sabri Lamouchi said was the final piece of the jigsaw and only played, I think, in 3 games. He wasn't the greatest player, bless him, but he's moved on to Cyprus. Ethan Laird has left Manchester United to join Swansea City on loan for the season. A bit of a coup because other Championship teams were in advanced positions apparently to get his signature, but Swansea dove in at the last minute. Was at MK Dons last season, so again rejoins Russell Martin. And the last two, Paul, Leighton Clarkson has left Liverpool to join Blackburn Rovers on loan for the season. This is a bit of a dream transfer for him, or loan. He's a very young midfielder, went to watch Blackburn for about 14 years in his youth, and said that when he knew he could leave Liverpool on loan, the only club he wanted to go to was Blackburn Rovers, so a real Roy of the Rovers story. And they done very well with Harvey Elliott last season, who actually come on as a sub, didn't he, at the weekend against Norwich. So be interesting to see if his career trajectory follows a similar path. And finally, Tom Carroll, who is technically unattached and joined Ipswich, but we talked about him. He was at QPR last season, so another player who's joined the Ipswich Revolution, and they haven't made the best of starts to their League One life, have they, so far this season, again under Paul Cook, because they've lost their first 2 games, I believe, or not won any of their first 2 games. Sorry, they drew the first one, so we might not be talking about them next season. That, Paul, you'll be glad to know, is the transfer roundup for now.
And when it takes the total income, departures and arrivals, 254 players have either had their contracts terminated or left the league for a total of 59.5 million. Players arriving, 199 players have signed for a Championship club so far this transfer window. 27 million spent, net 32 million. Way down on this time last year, but still a long way to go. As we know, COVID has curtailed a lot of the spending of a lot of the bigger clubs. I think some of the fees are a lot less than they would have been 18 months, 2 years ago. So thank you all for listening. As always, if you want to catch the main pod where we run down every game, we go through our goal of the game, shock of the game,
week, not game.
Game of the week. Yeah,
every game hasn't got a shock in it.
It has. In the Championship, it has. Any major podcast subscriber, check us out. Thank you for all the really kind comments in the last couple of weeks on our social media channels at Championship TA1. They've really been quite pleased. You know, it's been amazing to think that we do the podcast and actually people listen. I know that people download it, but it's to actually think that people listen, I think it always amazes us. And it does give us a lot of energy to carry on going. And if you are looking to support the show, a thumbs up or a subscribe will be amazing, because that does allow other people to see the channel. So that's goodbye from me.
That's goodbye from me.
And we'll talk to you all next week. Goodbye.
Bye.